Hello everyone. Today I'm going to be featuring something many of you have requested, which is a full Pommern game. Pommern? Pommern. And of course I'm featuring my full secondary build, which I find not only to be the most effective one, but also, quite importantly, to be absolutely hilariously fun. However, as mentioned, my build is very much all in, which means you give up basically all your standard survivability traits and main gun modules and upgrades, just to make sure your secondaries are as brutally powerful as possible. Now, first things first, no carrier in this matchup. No carrier means that instantly we can already play more aggressive than with a carrier in the game. More importantly, if there's any sort of AP carriers, that is like Hakuryu or especially Manfred von Richthofen, which is horrendously powerful, you're just gonna have to play more passive at the start, because pushing in against the carrier means being focused by him because you're the easiest target and you will get killed very quickly. So basically carriers just tend to induce much more passive play in all builds, not just secondary builds, but especially secondary builds that don't have as much healing, as much resistance to damage, are very susceptible, especially since they like to push in to actually make their secondaries work. There are, however, significant threats this game. First of all, it's a tier 10 matchmaking game, and more importantly, there are 4 DDs this game. So obviously, even with your Hydro, Pommern is a very clumsy ship. It doesn't handle particularly well, and it's large, and the torpedo protection isn't really that good. However, our Tallinn gets a really good early radar in. The Tallinn catches 3 of the 4 destroyers, and since A is being contested, I can easily deduce where the 4th DD is. That means there's Z52 in the cap in front of me, and some DD in A to the side. This is where I decide, you know what? The gearing is on the side, which is good. I have a potential opening here to play extremely aggressive. This is risky though. The Mogador is on the side, however, and the Mogador is a gunboat with fairly short-range torpedoes. Yes, he can YOLO me, but at this range he will not be able to effectively torpedo me. Note that I'm using the torpedo indicator not to launch torpedoes, but to get an assessment of what speed he's moving at to better aim my shots. However, he's far away, and the only big threats here are really the Cleveland that can burn me to death and the Mogador. I could get crossfired from the other side, but I want to play aggressive, I want to push in, I want to get these secondaries blazing as soon as possible. The Mogador pushes in and shoots HE, and that is of course a huge problem because once again this build does not run fire prevention, so we already have 2 fires burning on the ship, which means I really want to use my damage gun. However, I'm going to try to get as close to the island as possible, and ideally I delayed my damage con enough that when he shoots the next time and the shells land, damage con will just barely still be active. His shells come in, splash on my ship, but you saw that my damage con was still 1 second active. And the thing with damage con is, as long as it's still working, you can't be set on fire. So I try to maximize the efficiency of the damage con to get into a fairly good position behind the island, and ideally in a position where they will struggle to shoot at me too much. However, my Kleber and Alaska and basically my entire team is lemming training towards C, which means that only really Vladivostok is locking down the A cap. Admittedly, he did destroy the Cleveland, but that means we're gonna have a lot of firepower coming in from A, and there's a big risk of just being farmed from that flank. So this is where I decide, after giving myself some time for the damage con to recharge, it's time to reposition. Now, the best way to do it is just to reverse away. They have pushed in and contested this cap, and I do want to use my guns, but honestly, fighting a Monarch at range in a secondary Pommern is never gonna work out well. The Mogador is greedy to go for me, not surprising, so I give him a bit of AP. The best part about battleship AP on French destroyers is of course that the AP overpens don't oversaturate the ship the same way HE does. So AP actually really hurts on French DDs. Z52 is also kind of looking to push in a bit, so even more reason to get out of this position. 2 DDs are kind of basically crawling in. I'm taking a lot of enemy attention on me, and I'm kind of locking down this cap, keep helping my DDs. In fact, you can see 3 DDs have kind of clustered around me, because they know that it's very hard for the enemy to do anything as long as I'm locking down the central camp. The problem is I'm in a fairly vulnerable position, and obviously the Mogador really wants to kill me. So we're gonna see if we can do some sort of aggression on our stronger flank. In this case, the stronger flank is of course C. We have, what, 6, 7, 8 ships almost on that flank. So I'm gonna just reverse down towards the stronger side and see if I can maybe get something done on that flank instead. And more importantly, put the island between me and all those threats coming in from A. You see how many ships they have there. The Z-52 could be yodeling around that flank. The cruisers, the Monarch, the Tirpitz, all of them could be farming me from there. So I'm just gonna casually reverse this way. Gearing might have torpedoed me, but I'm already perfectly angled against the torpedoes, so the threat of damage is honestly fairly low. Keep in mind, however, that my hydro is down, so there is a risk of torpedoes coming in and catching me off guard, so we're playing pretty safe until we get it up again. Chapaev is trying to play aggressive. Obviously, we're going to try to punish this broadside, but the one thing I've said repeatedly about Pommern guns, don't expect much. They tend to be rather underwhelming, which is why I build it secondary. Z-52 goes for the aggression. I'm looking to see if it's actually going to go for it. I'm kind of baiting him. You see, I'm not accelerating yet. I'm waiting, letting him come around the corner. This is bait. I want him to YOLO me. And he decides to go for it. He thinks it's an easy kill. And this is where I start accelerating. And of course, I select him as a secondary target. The thing is, attacking from the angle he's now, in order to torpedo in front of me, he needs to shoot his torpedoes into the island. So as long as I keep playing kind of ring around the rosy, very carefully allowing my secondaries firing arcs, but at the same time constantly evading his torpedoes, he basically has to come all the way around the island to actually get torpedoes in that could potentially hit me. And that's exactly my intention. I keep just ring around the rosy, and there's nothing he can do about it. He goes for the desperation torpedoes, realizing he's gonna go down, but there's no chance of those catching me because the island is blocking his shot. More importantly, the things I mentioned that can stop your push is a carrier or DDs. Potentially long-range HE spammers as well, like Thunderers and Conquerors, but those are the most important ones. And the Z-52 that was locking down this camp just disappeared, and the Mogador on the other flank has gotten himself killed, which means the 2 DDs that lock down this side are gone. And as soon as the DDs are gone, well, then it's go time. This is that opening you want to look for. No DDs blocking your path. This is your chance to brawl without being annihilated. And obviously we're gonna take it. Riga attempts to go for the crossfire. I drop preemptive taunts to make sure he's gonna struggle with it, and we start going for the thunder. I shoot straight for his guns, damaging them, because I want to reduce his damage as much as possible. I'm not looking to get citadels in on him, because once again, with this IFHE secondary build, well, look at my damage. It says 50k, now it's 52.2, now it's 53.2, now it's 54k, now it's 55k. Basically, my secondaries are gonna farm him to death in a heartbeat. I don't want a torpedo yet, and the Odin is coming in around the corner, so I want to be careful about Odin's torpedoes. Now, his goal is obviously, one of my torpedoes hit the Riga, I think. His goal is obviously to go for the ram or get a huge hit in. Odin launches his torps as I predicted. My guns are reloaded, so once again, we target those vulnerable turrets and we permanently break one of them and we temporarily break the other. This means his guns no longer work, and seeing that he can no longer evade, I launch the torpedoes in. Stopping in time also made me dodge Odin's torpedoes entirely, which is obviously fantastic. If I hadn't killed the Thunder there, the Odin would have probably team-killed him. That's how badly I outplayed both of them. Both of them basically almost killed each other instead of killing me. The Riga pushes in. I want to get into a position where my secondaries can farm him, because I know that secondaries are located a bit higher up on the ship than most other guns, so I'm pretty sure that if I just push up a slight bit here, my secondaries will start blazing on this Riga as well. And that's exactly what happens. Now, some of my secondaries actually pen more than enough to pen his 35mm plating, so you can see my secondaries are actually doing a fair bit of damage to this Riga as well, and he's gonna start melting real fast. More importantly, my team is also showing up, forcing him to angle away, which does give me pretty good access to the ship itself. The main guns, however, well, not very impressive, as I've said in the past, but the secondaries more than make up for it, and they're racking up a ton of damage on this tier 9 cruiser. We get some decent damage from the main guns, but honestly, I've learned to not rely on Pommern main guns at all. We reverse away, of course. We don't want to stick there too long. And more importantly, a Monarch is pushing in from our flank and a Turpit. We angle in against the Turpit shells and we turn in and we angle in against the Monarch shells as well. Both of them shooting AP suits me perfectly because that German armor, angled like this, bounces all of it without issues. And Monarch, with me having Lutyens, this low HP, AR kicking in, full secondary firepower, a Monarch with that 32mm plating under this build, he's melting. 150k damage, 151.6, 52.9. Like, this is 54.3. He is absolutely melting in the sun. He cannot withstand this kind of secondary firepower. And I do have my damage con ready in case someone tries to set a fire on me, making sure I maintain my angling and keeping the island between myself and the Odin. That's very important if you look at my position. The island is continually between me and the Odin, mitigating Odin's chance of doing any real damage to me. Trying to get a bit more angle to get all my secondaries on the Monarch, but I will not be getting this kill. I think now Friesland finishes him off. Now the problem here is, I want to shoot this Turpitz, of course. He's giving me a fair bit of broadside. Can't really resist this kind of shot, but the problem is I'm about to give full broadside to the Odin. So my plan here is, since I have no more health and only 3k and no more heal, is that if I manage to reverse behind the island, I will break line of sight between myself and the Turpitz, and even without concealment expert, if I just stop shooting now, I should be out of range from the Odin's spotting range. If he realizes he can shoot me instead of, well, fighting the Kleber down there. He realizes it now, and he will be going for me, but because I'm not shooting anymore, you can see my detection range is just at the edge of Odin. He goes for a back turret shot, and Turpitz goes for what appears to be blind fire, but they no longer have any vision of me, so the shells go far above. And with plenty of health to spare, a whole 477 health, I'm sitting quite prettily in this cap. Now at this point, I should obviously not shoot anymore. That would be the intelligent thing. I have 2.1 million potential, but I reverse far enough to get spotted, and obviously there is no way, absolutely no way I can resist going for it. Turpitz has already targeted someone else. He's trying to aim for the curve first, and he's not really paying attention to me. The risk is of course the Odin realizing, hey, that guy is spotted again, but he has his hands full with the team down south, which means I'm still somehow alive. Secondaries blaze and don't get a kill on him, and the planes is keeping me spotted for a bit, but the Odin is more focused on his survival than actually finishing me off. Another amusing factor, of course, is that this was a 4DD game, but by playing so stupidly aggressive in the center with my Hydro, I've actually racked up 86,000 spotting damage on top of the 2.1 million potential damage. At this point, I do really want to get more damage though. There's a reason why my chat likes to call me Greed Guy instead of Creed Guy, because the #1 reason I die in games is basically I do something stupidly greedy, and then what could have been a glorious survival ends up with me dying just because I literally couldn't resist shooting. Maps like these, maps with island cover, a lot of island cover greatly favor Brawling battleships. It allows you to close the distance, it allows you to break line of sight. For example, the Monarch, I could break line of sight with his HE spam, I could get behind the island. The DDs that tried to YOLO me, well, you saw the Z52, he tried to really try to YOLO me there, but I just played Ring Around the Rosie and kited him around and basically outplayed him. There was nothing he could do about it, and especially with the secondary build, any DDs that spend any sort of duration within your secondary range will be just melting in a heartbeat. This build is stupidly fun. I'm not going to say it's easy to play though, because trying to push a flank and then having a Conqueror pop up in front of you at like 13 kilometers is like, oh god, please no. He's racking up 15k volleys on you while starting double, triple fires every volley. It's not fun. And in general, just HE spammers are very strong against this ship with this build, because once again, you are willingly specking out of fire prevention to get this build. But when the build works, when you manage to make it succeed, it is a ton of fun. And surprisingly good at winning games. Surprisingly good at winning games. Honestly, Pommern has surprised me. What hasn't surprised me is really my prediction that this ship would be really good in ranked sprint 3 versus 3, because honestly all secondary ships in small scale are great, which is why 3 Groza is great, and which is why Georgia full secondary build is also pretty damn good. What kind of surprised me maybe in ranked was Sean Bart was surprisingly good, mostly because, well, in sprint ranked, if you're being farmed down, you can just run in and ram someone. And Sean Bart is actually really good at making sure that no matter what happens, you always trade evenly. He dies, the game ends, 192,000 damage, Confederate, Dreadnought, High Caliber. I only really managed to score one of the kills, but the havoc I managed to cause in the center was incredibly impactful for the outcome of this match. Team score wise, 2.2k, mostly because of all the damage I did to the DDs. Could of course have been better, but hey, when you play aggressive, just staying alive, it tends to be a achievement in itself, especially with secondary builds. Detailed report wise, it really does show you just how much of the damage came from the so-called supplementary armament that this ship has. The main guns, 62 hits, 70k damage out of 153. Not exactly impressive damage per shell. We're talking like almost 1 overpen damage per shell. That's the average damage I cause per main guns. But then again, I don't recommend the Pommern because of the main guns. What I recommend the Pommern for is, well, torpedoes, 38,000. That's a pretty nice bonus. But more importantly, secondary battery, 82,000 damage. No, we didn't really get much fire damage. Some games you can get a lot of fire damage. That's very RNG dependent. But the good thing with the IFHE secondaries is that you don't need to get fires to deal damage. Look at the Thunder. 64,000 damage. I mean, what? If you go back and look how much damage I did with my main guns and the Taurs, then you realize just how badly he melted. Same thing with the Monarch and same thing with the Riga. Secondaries ate all these ships alive. Pommern is incredibly frustrating to deal with if he's angled towards you, because once again, you don't when you're fighting in the Pommern, you don't want to try to use all your guns. The firing angles are too poor for that. You want to be in just enough angle so that all your secondaries can fire, and then you just use your front guns. The second you try to use your back guns, you become very vulnerable, because you're a huge target to blap with AP. But if you manage your angling and just use your secondaries as kind of the main armament, oh man, you can do a lot of havoc with this thing. By the way, I did post the build for this. The build that I'm using is of course the same that I use in my Pommern review, in case you're wondering. And also I did post a house tour. I put it on my YouTube, but it's kind of unlisted. I can put it in the top comment. I can pin a comment actually with the house tour if you guys want to see it. I didn't feel like posting it as a public video because it's not really normal YouTube content, whatever. But I couldn't really put it up on Twitter either because of limitations. So I just put it as an unlisted video on my YouTube. If you guys are interested, since once again the house has been eating a lot of my free time and has been kind of affecting my YouTube, but most of the stuff with the house are done now, so I should be able to be posting videos at a normal rate again. So hooray for that. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys had a good time, and I will see you guys next time.